Hi, I'm Lianne Sanderson, and this is the Women's Football Show on talkSPORT 2. Now, my next guest is a friend of the show, a friend of mine. I've known her for about 15 to 20 years when we were way back when. And it's important that we draw and shed light on these types of conversations. Now, it's Ash Hinks that's joining me, former Charlton, England younger generation player as well, now currently at AFC Wimbledon, banging in the goals like she does. Ash, thanks for joining me. Now, obviously, I'd love to talk about some more positive things, but I saw your Instagram, and I think it's important for people to, to bring attention to stuff like this. We talk about the Lionesses a lot, about the Barclays WSL and how the salaries are great and how the teams are flying. But how are you first and foremost? And talk to me about why you felt it was so necessary to come out on Instagram and talk about, the salaries that were announced yesterday.
Firstly, hello. Thank you for having me. Always nice to jump on the show. I think, yes, unfortunately, I saw some marketing communication yesterday regarding minimum standards for WSL2 that have just been released. I think it just touched a chord with me that obviously on one hand, it is positive that they're bringing in minimum standards. So I would like to just kind of put that on record. However, the realities of the wages discussed are just so below what people should be earning, essentially. And obviously, typically, there's lots of different anomalies to do with this, but ultimately, that's not enough money for someone to live on, first and foremost. Definitely, if you live sort of southern end of the country, your cost of living sort of up north is a lot lower than the cost of living down south. So, yeah, just touched a nerve with me, I think.
Yeah, I want to read some of what you wrote. You said, my younger self could have only have dreamed of where women's football is today, but there's still so much work to be done. Wages are still so small, but a good place to start. I don't know any other workplace in the world where you can work in the same industry for 10 plus years, yet remain on the same wages or they're lowered. Have a think about that for a second. Anyway, ran over. And then it seemed like you got a lot of responses from that. And I think this is what really drew attention to it. 28,000 wage is only suitable for under 25s. What does that mean for over 25s? People like us. Obviously, I'm not playing anymore. 28,000 is nowhere near sustainable for anywhere in London on that living wage. As we know, cost of living, everything is getting more expensive. Is there going to be something in place for minimal term contract offering more stability for players? And at what point are professional players going to be earning what they deserve? The list could go on. I mean, we're talking about at least 40,000 to 45,000. And you're right, Ash, you touched upon it there with regards to minimum wages, and it depends on where you are in the country. So talk to me about that a little bit more.
I think just from my own perspective, I think first and foremost, like the thing I touched upon in the industry, I imagine me in my industry that I work in now, I have been doing the same role for 10 plus years. Say you have years where you exceed as a professional in your workplace. You get bonuses, you get a salary increase, you get the recognition you deserve. I don't know, you get more put into your pension, whatever it might be. Yet when it comes to you being a footballer, professional, semi-professional, however they want to wrap it up, those same basics aren't there. You still got people earning the same amount that they earned 15 years ago. That to me is just insanity. And even if you look at the minimum wage increases that go April after April with HMRC, yet the wages in women's football just don't seem to follow suit. Of course, it's incredible, some of the wages and the people earning what they earn in the WSL now. It's insane. And as I touched upon, my younger self could only imagine where women's football is at now. But it's still, WSL2, National League lower, those same things that were happening 15 years ago are still happening now. And it's like, okay, how do we get that improved as well?
Yeah, do you think that sometimes, I talk about it a lot on the show, there's a focus on things that don't need to be focused on, like they've rebranded the WSL1, WSL2 now, they've done a new graphic, which I didn't really like particularly, like it's a pink graphic, I feel like we've gone back in time, but I feel like they're focusing on things that don't need to be focused on. And I think there's also an element where, we talk about the big four at the top, right? Chelsea, Man United, Man City and Arsenal. Even in the WSL, I still think there's not many players that own their own houses, own their own cars, make a good amount of money. So if that's happening in WSL, then obviously it's going to filter down, isn't it?
I completely agree. And I think that's what you just touched upon then is kind of the key point. If you're a young professional starting out, you're 18, 19, You get thrust into a professional environment. The wages they're talking about are very reasonable. You are an inexperienced person in the workplace. You start off on the minimum. However, my issue is it's the players that are 10 years older than that. They're 28, they're 29, in some rights, still in their peak of their career, yet they're still being, you know, with the 28 grand wage, the same as an 18, 19-year-old. Now, you want to succeed in life, not just your profession. You want to go on nice holidays, own homes, put money away for your future self. I just don't see how that's possible on the wages they're talking about. And, you know, it seems a bit dangerous in the sense you're kind of moving towards a young women's game, which, again, I'm a huge advocate for. But what does that mean for the people that need to earn a certain amount of money just to survive? That's the
Yeah.
issue.
And obviously, we've got friends that still play in the WSL, that play in the WSL2, formerly the Championship. Like, what is the consensus? Because obviously, you speak up about this, which I absolutely love. But like, what more can be done to like draw attention to this? Because obviously, there needs to be more than people like you and I talking about this. Do you think there could be more done at the top of the FA? Obviously, the Lionesses are running away. Some of them are household names. Not all of them are household names. It has to be said. But like, what more can people do, Ash?
I think people need to talk about it. I think the FA need to draw on live experiences, talk to people that have been within the football pyramid for a period of time, not just the people that are in the pyramid, sorry, now, i.e. at the top level, because they have no idea or understanding of where the game is at below their level, which I completely understand. Everyone's very, you know, centre focused, and of course you've got to concentrate on yourself. No one really wants to speak up, I guess, because I mean it's the same as it always is. You're deemed as a certain type of character, I guess, if you kind of speak out and you don't necessarily agree. But yeah, I think there's still so much to be done. I think like the big thing for me as well is, so you've got the WSL now 1 and 2. They've branded it together. They are now 1, great. But the National League below that, the tier 3s downwards, you've got those 2 tiers, tier 3, North and Southern, who are filtering directly into the WSL now. Then what work is there in the National League to increase wages, full-time access, decent facilities, decent access to doctors, physios, all the elite level performance stuff that's required in order to get to the WSL? I feel like then the National League's now being left behind a little bit.
Yeah, and do you think there's an element as well where it's almost like a lot of players just want to be part of a club, so they want to say they're a professional player? I think there's an element because I see that when I'm visibly at games. It's like, you know, players are okay to be at a big club, then they go to the WSL2, and it's like, I'm a professional footballer. They have it in their Instagram bios, but that, what does that mean? Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're getting
Exactly.
paid literally peanuts to play football and you're not being treated in the way you deserve to be treated to a certain degree, like, do you think there's an element there where people are kind of getting a bit carried away and not really thinking about like the what next? You know, you talk about the leagues below, like they should be focused on as well, because you're right, they're filtering in.
I think absolutely it's I'm a professional footballer that you can put in your bio. What does that lead to in the men's game? Maybe something slightly different to what it means in the women's game. You don't have access to the same amount still of sponsorship deals and stuff like that. And I think that people are too short-sighted. Like, not only is a football career extremely short, but in women's games on these 1 and 2 year deals, I mean, you're lucky if you get a 2 year deal in WSL2 lower. So let's say 1 year. What happens if you get an injury? You might be a professional footballer. You might get an ACL that you struggle to recover from. Where does that leave you in your life? And I think that that's from where I draw on my experience. I wasn't willing to accept minimum wage in order to be a professional footballer, and I turned down multiple opportunities when I was a lot younger because I wanted to have something in my future. I wanted to have a career. It was important for me that I had something that I could fall back on should football not work out. And that's where I think the game is still at. You've still got people that are just prepared to just accept the bare minimum to say they're a professional footballer.
Because they're almost like scared and threatened that someone else will come along and they will take that opportunity. I mean,
Yeah.
someone like yourself, do you think, I know you work full time,
Yeah.
but do you, and you've always done that for a number of years, like, do you think that's almost had a knock on effect on your football career? Because you've almost had to choose one or the other. Like, you're a good player. We were
Absolutely.
good when we were younger. We were at Chelsea, Charlton, you know, but it's almost like you had to come to a point. Yeah, the game's grown, but like where you had to say, I need to live and I need to put food on the table. And then I also want to play football.
I mean, this is the reality of my situation. I had to turn down England to go away on camps multiple times because I would get unpaid at work, yet you wouldn't at the time get paid to go away with England. So I had to turn down going and representing my country because I couldn't afford to go and play football for my country. Now, again, I know that's completely different now. There's lots of stuff in place. And again, people being professional footballers, they'll never find themselves in those situations. Like, even the girls that are in under 19 setups now will be getting paid from their respective clubs. So I know that's not going to happen. But yeah, for myself, I had to make a decision, and my footballing career then suffered from it. You know, I've still done very well in my football career, considering I've had to work full time as well. However, yes, of course, like, I definitely think that I had the ability to,
Yeah.
you know, be there for sure. It's just I had to make the financial decision not to.
Yeah, and I think it's important to shed light on these things because people think this was like, 10 years ago. We're talking as like early as 3 years ago, before the Lionesses won the Euros. People are focusing on England and they've done amazingly well. But I do think it's important for people to realise that there are, other players out there. There are other teams that are struggling. If there's teams struggling in the WSL to get attendances, what do you think it's like lower down? So as always, Ash, it's always great to get you on. I wish we could talk about something more positive, but hopefully I think there's a lot of people out there that relate. I'm sure you've had loads of feedback on your Instagram and, there's a lot of people out there that will relate to this. So thanks so much for joining me. I'll get you back on later on in the season. I have to talk about your actual amazing football career, as we always do, and how AFC Wimbledon's going.
Thank you very much.